Have you ever wondered what's happening inside your body right now? Every month, inside the female body, an extraordinary transformation takes place, a carefully orchestrated sequence of events that's been happening for thousands of years, yet most people have never actually witnessed. This is the story of ovulation. Using advanced three-dimensional medical animation, we're going to take you inside the female reproductive system to see exactly what happens during ovulation. You'll watch as hormones trigger follicle development, witness the precise moment an egg is released, and follow its journey through the reproductive tract. This entire process unfolds over several weeks, but we'll compress it into the next few minutes so you can see every critical step. Let's begin our journey. We're now looking at the female reproductive system from the inside. What you see here are the two ovaries, almond-shaped organs, each about 3 to 5 centimeters long, roughly the size of a large grape. They sit on either side of the uterus, connected by delicate, tube-like structures called the fallopian tubes. The ovaries have two essential functions. First, they store and release eggs. Second, they produce hormones that regulate the entire menstrual cycle. But here's something remarkable: a woman is born with all the eggs she'll ever have, approximately 1 to 2 million of them. By the time she reaches puberty, only about 300,000 remain. And of those, only 4 to 500 will actually be released through ovulation during her lifetime. Let's zoom in closer to see inside the ovary itself. Notice these tiny circular structures scattered throughout the tissue? These are follicles, fluid-filled sacs, each containing a single immature egg. At any given time, the ovary contains thousands of these dormant follicles, but each month, only a select few will begin to develop. The story of ovulation actually begins in the brain. At the start of each menstrual cycle, let's call this day 1, a small gland at the base of the brain called the pituitary gland releases a hormone into the bloodstream. This hormone is called FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone. Watch as the FSH travels through the bloodstream, making its way down from the brain to the ovaries. When it arrives, it binds to special receptors on the surface of several follicles. This is the wake-up call. The follicles that receive this signal begin to grow. Over the next week, you can see these selected follicles starting to enlarge. They're filling with more and more fluid, expanding like tiny water balloons. The eggs inside are also maturing, undergoing complex cellular changes that prepare them for potential fertilization. This is around day 6 or 7 of the cycle, and these follicles are now in competition with each other. Usually, one follicle emerges as the winner. We call this the dominant follicle. You can see it here, growing faster and larger than its neighbors. As it pulls ahead, something interesting happens. The dominant follicle releases signals that suppress the growth of the other follicles. These smaller follicles sense they've lost the race, and they gradually shrink and disappear back into the ovary tissue. This mechanism ensures that typically only one egg is released each month. By day 12 or 13 of the cycle, the dominant follicle has reached impressive size, about 2 centimeters in diameter, roughly the size of a small grape. Inside this fluid-filled sac, the egg has fully matured and is ready for release. But the follicle needs one more signal before ovulation can occur. As the dominant follicle has been growing, it's been producing increasing amounts of a hormone called estrogen. Watch as estrogen levels in the bloodstream steadily rise, climbing higher and higher each day. When estrogen reaches a critical threshold, it triggers a dramatic response from the brain. The pituitary gland suddenly releases a massive surge of another hormone, LH, or luteinizing hormone. This LH surge is like a starting gun. You can see the hormone flooding into the bloodstream, racing toward the ovaries. Ovulation will now happen within the next 24 to 36 hours. Let's watch closely what happens at the ovary. The LH surge causes profound changes in the dominant follicle. Specialized enzymes are released that begin breaking down the follicle wall at one specific point on its surface, called the stigma. The follicle continues to swell, and the pressure of the fluid inside builds and builds. The wall at the stigma stretches thinner and thinner, becoming almost translucent. You can see it bulging outward, pressing against the surface of the ovary. The tension increases. The tissue becomes fragile, ready to burst. And then watch this moment carefully rupture. The follicle wall breaks open, and the egg is expelled from the ovary in a dramatic cascade of clear follicular fluid. This is ovulation, the moment we've been building toward. There it is, the egg, also called an oocyte, floating free in the follicular fluid. It's surrounded by a protective layer of cells called the cumulus oophoris, which forms a cloud-like structure around it. The egg itself is about 1/10 of a millimeter in diameter, barely visible to the naked eye if you held it in your hand. Yet it's actually the largest cell in the entire human body, about 30 times larger than a sperm cell. But the egg's journey is far from over. Right now, it's floating freely in the space around the ovary, and it faces a critical challenge. It needs to enter the fallopian tube. If it doesn't make it into the tube, it will simply dissolve in the abdominal cavity within hours. Fortunately, the fallopian tube has been preparing for exactly this moment. Look at these finger-like projections at the end of the tube. They're called fimbriae, and they're incredibly important. The fimbriae sweep gently back and forth over the surface of the ovary like tiny hands, creating currents in the surrounding fluid. The fimbriae are remarkably sensitive. They detect chemical signals released during ovulation and move toward the site where the egg has been released. Watch as they capture the egg and its surrounding cloud of cells, drawing them into the opening of the fallopian tube. This capture is essential. It's the beginning of the egg's journey toward the uterus. Once safely inside the fallopian tube, the egg enters a narrow tunnel lined with thousands of tiny hair-like structures called cilia. These cilia are microscopic, but they have a crucial job. Watch as they beat in coordinated waves, creating a gentle current that slowly propels the egg along the tube toward the uterus. This journey through the fallopian tube will take several days, but this is also where something critical could happen. If sperm are present and sperm can survive in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days, fertilization would occur here in the fallopian tube. The egg, however, has a much shorter lifespan. It remains viable for only about 12 to 24 hours after ovulation. This narrow window is why timing matters so much for conception. Now let's return to the ovary to see what's happening at the site where the egg was released. The ruptured follicle hasn't finished its job. It's collapsing inward, folding in on itself, and undergoing a remarkable transformation. Over the next few days, it becomes an entirely new structure, called the corpus luteum, Latin for yellow body. You can see it here on the ovary surface, a golden-colored, wrinkled mass of tissue. The corpus luteum might look like leftover tissue, but it has a vital role to play. The corpus luteum begins producing large amounts of a hormone called progesterone. Watch as this progesterone enters the bloodstream and travels to the uterus. There, it signals the uterine lining to thicken and become rich with blood vessels, preparing a welcoming environment in case a fertilized egg arrives. From this point forward, 2 very different scenarios are possible, and the corpus luteum's fate depends on which one unfolds. In the first scenario, if sperm fertilize the egg, the fertilized egg, now called an embryo, continues developing as it travels down the fallopian tube. About 6 to 10 days after ovulation, this tiny embryo will reach the uterus and burrow into the prepared lining, a process called implantation. When implantation occurs, the embryo begins releasing a hormone that signals the corpus luteum to keep producing progesterone. The corpus luteum continues its crucial work, supporting the early pregnancy until the placenta can take over several weeks later. In the second scenario, which happens most months, the egg is not fertilized. Without fertilization, the egg simply dissolves and is reabsorbed by the body. The corpus luteum continues producing progesterone for about 14 days, but without a pregnancy signal, it begins to break down. As the corpus luteum dies, it turns white and shrinks, becoming a small scar on the ovary surface called a corpus albicans. When the corpus luteum breaks down, progesterone and estrogen levels drop sharply. This sudden hormone drop triggers the uterus to shed its thickened lining, and this is menstruation. The cycle begins again. Let's zoom out now to appreciate the remarkable coordination happening here. The brain sends chemical messages through hormones. The ovaries respond by developing follicles and releasing eggs. The fallopian tubes position themselves to capture the egg. The uterus prepares its lining. All of this happens automatically, without any conscious thought, every single month. This cycle repeats from puberty through menopause, a span of about 30 to 40 years. Most women experience approximately 400 to 500 complete ovulatory cycles in their lifetime. Understanding ovulation matters for many reasons. For women trying to conceive, knowing when ovulation occurs helps identify the fertile window, typically the 5 days before ovulation, and the day of ovulation itself. For those tracking their reproductive health, changes in ovulation patterns can signal hormonal imbalances or conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome or endometriosis. And for anyone curious about human biology, it's simply remarkable to see how precisely this process unfolds. Here are some fascinating facts about ovulation. About 20% of women can actually feel ovulation happening. They experience a brief twinge or sharp pain on one side of the abdomen called Mittelschmerz, German for middle pain. This sensation is caused by the follicle rupturing and fluid being released into the abdominal cavity. Ovulation doesn't always alternate between the left and right ovary, it's somewhat random which side releases an egg each cycle. And while we've shown one egg being released, occasionally 2 follicles develop simultaneously and release 2 eggs. If both eggs are fertilized, the result is fraternal twins. What you've just witnessed is one of nature's most elegant processes, a monthly cycle of preparation and possibility, orchestrated by hormones, executed with precision, and essential for human reproduction. This process has been refined over millions of years of evolution, and it continues to work reliably, month after month, in millions of women around the world. Whether you're learning about your own reproductive health, studying human biology, or simply satisfying your curiosity about how the body works, understanding ovulation helps us appreciate the extraordinary complexity happening inside us every day. Processes we rarely see, yet which are fundamental to life itself. Thank you for watching this 3-dimensional medical animation. If you found this visualization helpful and informative, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more detailed explorations of human anatomy and physiology. Until next time, stay curious about the amazing biological processes happening inside your body right now.